everything today is different. Carrie is away. Carrie has to do some stuff, and we've had some technical problems this morning. Welcome to the Backpack Show, everybody. It's the place where we find business insights and ideas from unusual places. I can't even say it right. Hello to my mother, who's on YouTube, which means that maybe she had some problem seeing the other link. Hey, Chloe. Hey, Michelle. Remember the 5th of November. Well, we have someone from the land of the 5th of November here today. So Maïna Cissé is here, who's going to talk about her incredible company. And if things work, I also have a farm-to-table experience with Kristin Canty, but we're having a few technology problems, so we'll have to see how that goes. Like I said, there is no Carrie O'Shea-Gorgon. She is running Marketing Props B2B. Her whole day is full of stuff, but that doesn't mean we can't start the show. Backpack Show. This is sometimes what happens when we have shows where some things can go wrong. They go wrong. And I'm not as good at handling that as Carrie is, but I'm going to do my best. Hey, let's start off with a hello to Suze up in Canada. Hey, Suze, how are you? And happy birthday, Sarah. Sarah's birthday is today. She can say she's 30-something, but she's not anymore. Happy birthday, Sarah. So glad to wish you a happy birthday this morning. Everybody should give her a little hello. Now, she's over on the YouTubes, so a couple of you might have to jump ship to get over there. Hey, Kip, good to see you. So glad for this part of my morning. So I'm glad you're here for this part of the morning. We are going to start with my friend Maïna, and I am, now my mom's on Facebook. She's everywhere. And it's going to be a lot of fun, and if I make all the buttons work. Maïna has a really radical, interesting story and runs something called the Under Argument. So we're going to start there, and it's an exciting bit. Let me push a button and hope everything works. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
The best I've ever been on today so far. That's about all you get. So Maïna, you run something called the Under Argument, which is very close to the undergarment, which is because that may or may not relate to what we're doing here. Oh, I forgot to put the word Instagram on this, so I'll have to fix that. Tell us a little bit about this business and what makes it so different.
Yeah. Under Argument, play on words with undergarment and arguments. So I started the brand, which is a lingerie brand, obviously, 5 years ago. And the idea behind it was that I didn't feel like the world actually needed a new lingerie brand. And however passionate I was about the brand, I wanted to make sure that I was creating something that was adding value and had purpose. And the way I went about this was treating the lingerie I was creating as a new medium to pass on messages that I felt were very close to me. So each of the collections that I create are little capsule collections, and I name them, each of them after an argument against the norm. So my very first one was called For Awesome Against Perfect. The second one was For Identity Against Stereotypes. And each of the pieces I create have a little encouraging message at the back. And I really wanted every touch point in my brand to be empowering. So what I also created, which has become core to the brand, is a concept called the anti-casting. So what I do with each of my collections is that there is a permanent call out for women to share their story related to one of the themes. So for example, the anti-perfectionism theme or the anti-stereotype theme. They send me their stories, I read the stories, and this is how I then select the faces of the brand. So I never get any photos, I never get any measurements. I don't know anything else from the women that come and shoot with us, but the story that they send to me that are shared to me based on one of the topics of the brand. And so this has been a very interesting experience. My background is marketing, and all the women that you can see here as you're scrolling through the website, none of them are professional models. They all shared a story. You can see in the stories section, like all the different stories and topics that are covered. It can be, like I said, anything from how you live through, perfectionism and expectations, through stereotypes, through any sort of difference you might have, any sort of, relationship. The couple that we see here, Mary and Lily, are a polyamorous couple. you see people talking about their relationships, they talk about their professional lives, their successes, their failures, their struggles, and it's been a very amazing experience. It's a very therapeutic way to engage with a brand as well. So I was really, from past experiences, I was never satisfied enough with the campaigns that I was running, and doing something that actually adds value in that way. You kind of go full circle, sending your story to someone you don't know. You don't know if you'll be selected. You then selected. You come to a photo shoot, something you've never done. You're half naked in front of the camera. So it's a very cathartic and therapeutic approach to what some people would call marketing. For me, I tried to create an experience. So yeah, that's the brand in a nutshell.
So I want to go back and pick through just a couple of bits of this. Especially, I want to sort of Americanize it a tiny bit for. I mean, we have an international gang here, but I want to. Some people don't know that laundry also would be like lingerie type of store. So you call it laundry. Is laundry more a British thing or a French thing?
In French, it's lingerie. Yeah.
Oh, right, of course. But then in Britain, it's more laundry. Is that
laundry? Well, I think people say like in French, we say lingerie for everything.
Got it.
In the UK, I feel like they would say lingerie for something a bit more premium that has lace and embroideries, which is what I make. And then we would just say, underwear for like any basic undergarment. Got
it. Just in case I had that wrong. So so the piece that people may or may not have heard was just that none of these people are professional models. You've chosen them a lot of times kind of sight unseen, so to speak. You pick them when you're finally ready to make the shoot, obviously, but you build the story and then the people fit the story.
Yes, I create a theme, which is my collection, and the people can send me their stories whenever they want. The anti-casting is open all year round, and there's just a form to fill in. So they send me their story, and I select the story and when I'm ready to shoot, and I get them in. So I usually shoot like about once a month. But yeah, all these women just share the story. Julia, you can see here on this picture, shared a story. She's a neurosurgeon from Lithuania, and she went through a case of sexual harassment at work, had to sue her boss, and she's talking through all the challenges that she's come across, and the pressure of sort of like a sexist environment, and her move to the UK and how she's been developing now in her career. So it's very empowering, very interesting. You have on the right Jade, who's also talking. So this collection that you can see is called For Sexy Against Sexism, and Jade on the right is talking about sexism and intersectional sexism and the impact of it on minorities especially. So yeah, it's a lot of, it's lingerie, but there's a lot of depth behind the brand.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so then I wonder, when you get feedback about this, what I wonder is, they're beautiful pieces, right? You can't deny that the material, the setup, the concept, the design of it is very very forward, and I clearly am very fashionable, so this. But the experience is that. But what do you get more comments on? Do you get more comments on this world building you've done with the brand, or do you get like, this is just really good stuff? I'm glad I have it because I can put it in my.
It's sort of like, it's an interesting question because I get it asked a lot. I think one doesn't exist without the other, and people usually find out about the brands through the concept and fall in love with the product. And I think when you're trying to do something like this, where you go a little bit sideways from what everyone else is doing, you can't have a product that's not up to the standards as well. So you have to have, it's a whole package. And the feedback, I mean, you can't have a shitty product and a great concept, or a great product and a shitty concept, although that would probably work better. But when you're trying to do something as different as the anti-casting, you need or anti-casting, as you would say, you probably can't get away with not having a great product. So the way I source my materials is all made in Europe. There's a lot of thought put behind everything that I do and that I make. So the materials are sourced primarily in Europe. It's all like velvet from Switzerland and France, embroideries from France, mesh from Italy, and then it's made in Madagascar. And the reason why I made it in Madagascar is I wanted all my world put into this project. So I have the whole European aspect because I was born in Europe and grew up in Europe. And then I'm also from Africa, and I wanted to produce in Africa lingerie is so specific. It's really hard to find places there that would that where you would be able to make this garment, and especially places that sort of give back. But the factory I use have been making premium lingerie for decades, and they work with French brands especially. They also created a program locally to help the kids in the area. So they created a school, and they used part of the profit of the factory goes to that school that they created to help kids that are on the streets and have potentially never been to school. And for them to enter public school, they need a certain level. So they help them get to that level so they can enter public school again.
Mm-hmm.
They did like really amazing things. Like the first time I went there, I was so amazed. They used part of the grounds at the factory they have a little veggie patch at the back.
Oh, wow.
So they cook for the kids every day. So they have they make sure the kids have at least one fresh meal every day. So it's all these little things. Obviously, it's so far removed from the product when you think about vegetables and local kids. But for me, whatever you can do through the things that you create to help others it makes a lot of sense to really think about these things.
Lingerie is rarely part of the larger like accusation pool for things like fast fashion.
Mm-hmm.
But when you explained factory, and then you went on to say it's a factory that funds schools and it's a factory that feeds kids, that's crazy talk. Like that's not, no one's factory does those things.
Yeah.
And how did you
explain that? Stories like it's fashion is not always doom and gloom. And there's a lot of bad things, but there's still a lot of things that you can do. I think when you make fashion, you have to think about all the aspects and all the impact you can have, and whatever call you make for your brand and how you produce things, you have to do it with a reason in mind. So for example, for me, I use man-made materials. I have to use the best man-made materials I can find because I want my product to be a product that you can wear for a long time. And it's a premium product and comes at a price. So I also don't want people to be disappointed. I think that's the reaction that products, like, it's even better than what I had seen online. It's even better than what I thought. It's even, it's quality that you've never seen before because you tend to buy your underwear at Target or wherever, and you've never even seen something like it sometimes. So
right.
So yeah.
And I want to get back to that, but I also want to read one of these stories. Oh, let me just push this goofy graphic out of the way for a second, just so we can all see it the better. So this says, "All I Wanted Was to Be Thin" by Becky Stone. This is on the stories page. So this is someone who's posed for you.
Yeah.
So I've spent every day of my life, as far back as I can remember, wanting just one thing: to be thin. It would be the greatest thing that could ever happen to me. I would give up 10 years of my life to just be thin and never have to think about my body and why it wasn't right ever again. That was all I wanted. So, I mean, this is clearly, when someone sees this and they're thinking lingerie, those are not two things that always match up. Or people's experience with lingerie who have their body challenges, it's almost always a very negative and shame-filled kind of yucky experience. And you're saying, don't worry about that right now. We got you.
It's tricky because when you make a bra, there's so many sizes. Like, I probably have about 40 sizes of bras. I don't consider myself inclusive. And for me to consider myself inclusive, I would probably have to triple, quadruple that number. And that would still be small. So it's a very tricky thing, and it's a very difficult conversation to have with people when you don't have their size, especially if it's people that have sent you their story. But I think if someone has sent, because I don't ask for measurements, I don't ask for sizes, and also I continuously try to add more sizes to my range. I welcome people to send me their stories, even if I don't have their size yet. And so it has happened on a couple of occasions that I selected a story for someone from someone who had a cup size that I didn't have yet. And it's a conversation to be had. And I think for me, it's keeping me on my toes to always remember, to push for more. And for people, it's also educational. Like, I think people with big cups, for example, or larger sizes, they don't need to be educated. It's difficult. They all know that, and it's frustrating for everyone involved. But I think it's a good reminder. Like, I'm not going to stop doing the anti-casting just because I don't have every single size that I would need to cover the whole world, because there's still great stories to be told by other people. But it is a constant reminder of, you need to keep pushing things. I'm adding more sizes for my briefs beginning of next year. I'm adding more cups second quarter of the year. So yeah, it's just, it keeps evolving, and it's great to see, everything is self-funded in my brand, and lingerie is very expensive. So it's really, good to see what the interest is before I can invest into more sizes and create a sort of like core range. And something that I created around that as well is like, I can't stock 40 sizes. Financially, it wouldn't be viable. So there's also I launched I can't speak. I launched pre-orders earlier this year. So I could afford to offer all these sizes, but with a delay for production. So there's also that educational piece of, I'm a small brand. This is what sustainability looks like for me, is to offer the sizes, but it might take you a few weeks to receive your set. And yeah, you just sort of find ways around.
And when you were talking about the price, I had to look because, of course, when you say it's quite pricey, in my head, I buy my underpants in a bag. They're the opposite of pricey. You can get, you could buy a hamburger or 8 pairs of my underpants. So I looked at it. It's not crazy pricey. It's something that if you were going to treat yourself and want to, you're not necessarily immediately going to have the under argument, 7 days. You're not going to wear 7 days of under argument, but it's like 50 quid or so. It's 50 quid for the bottom. You only get, you get the piece or something. That's not bad. It's about 100-ish for kind of a set of laundry. That's not.
So yeah, you're probably in dollars. You're probably around like $150 for a set. But I think for me, like what has been difficult for me as well is I think you create with people that in mind. And I know where I come from, and I know that where I come from, people buy their underwear in sets, and they buy bulks, and so creating something this expensive sometimes feels inappropriate. But then when you're, on this side, creating it, sourcing it, you're like, it's not really like, I'm barely making it work. Do you see what I mean? Like you're
right.
You're pricing it right. Like this is the lowest price I could ever offer. And so that's the challenge, is really being comfortable with prices that are not the usual prices you grew up,
right. And your point is so perfect, because again, if you were of a certain scale, you'd have a bit more margin, but you're not working with a lot of margin for this, is what you're saying. And so that requires that people be even more of a fan of what you do. By the way, I love this graphic for the gift card, because if you just see all of these curves that would never be on any modeling site ever. And it's just it's intoxicating to see just how much you embrace all the types of people.
That's the thing as well. Like for me, like I worked in fast fashion for a big part of my career. And I see now, like, a big challenge I've had for the past couple of years is seeing people talking about diversity as if it was a trend. And that really hurts me. So with my brand, this is why I put the story forefront. I don't want to talk about the body. And sometimes people tell me, oh, you've got such a great body positive brand. And what that usually means for a lingerie brand, especially, is that I go out seeking people with body differences, which is not what I do. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that if that's what your brand does. Like, the more to you, like it's great that you're trying to represent more diversity. But I didn't want to fall into a stereotype, because I know myself as a minority. It's not because I see a Black person that I feel represented. And
right.
Like often you just feel used. Like you're just like, oh, you're using this person because whoever else has been using it and using her or him, and it doesn't feel genuine. And so for me, I just want to cut all the crap and just be like, you know what, send me your stories. And it takes longer for people, with body differences or from different ethnic backgrounds to get involved, because I always say it is riskier for them.
Yes.
You have more to risk when you're from a minority and you expose yourself half naked on the internet. It is not the same when you're used to seeing yourself in magazines. Like people are comfortable with that, but you have different expectations and different standards to live up to from your, on your personal front as well as your professional front when you're from a minority group. So it is an interesting way of trying to do diversity without, putting set rules in front of it.
It's big. Maïna Cissé, if you can stay with me, but just go, we're going to put you backstage. I could do a little advertising, and I'm going to bring Kristin out. Kristin, it's going to work. I have so much faith it's going to work. It's going to happen. and you're on your mobile now. So we'll make it work. All right, we're going to do a little bit of sponsor love. I could hear Carrie typing and yelling, sponsors, because I haven't done it yet. We're sponsored by StreamYard. So if you want to have incredible, inclusive undergarment makers on your show, you need a show. So this app runs so easily. It's so simple, which is why it gives me all the time in the world to fix tech problems. cbrogan.me/StreamYard. You can make your own show, but your lingerie is not included. Hey, authors, you can make a cool website to go with your awesome book. You've got the book published, it can be found on all the various sites, but you don't really have a home. You don't have a place where you could put up blogs, social content, contests, invitations, events, conversations around your next set of books. You can't really build that incredible, energetic group of people that need to come and find you if you don't come to something like a pub site. pub-site.com. Tom Clancy uses this. Robin Cook uses this. There are so many people who put their trust in PubSite because they just want to write their books and sell their books. They want to, gather around them the kinds of people who love what they're doing. So they just trust PubSite, which is powered by FSB Associates. 25 years in the business of book publicity, the best in the business, our friends, also sponsors of Person of the Day. Go to pub-site.com. Remember, it's free for 14 days. Then you have to pay only $19.95 a month. And if you get sick of trying to make it for yourself, which you better not, because it only takes a couple hours, but you could be not into it. It's only $4.99. Carrie always says this part. It's only $4.99 to get it made by them or something for something. I don't know. I did it. All right. So that was mine. I'm going to do my bestest. Kristin and I have not tested this. We're going to try to make it work. I have every faith, just like George Michael. Hang on. Kristin, do we hear you and do I hear me?
Hi, I hear you.
Woo, it worked. How are you?
I'm good. Sorry about all of that.
That's okay. Is there any opportunity I could bring you 3-ish feet closer to your device? Is that even a possible? Yeah. That's the best. $4.99 because thank you, Deanna. Deanna in the comments today. Carrie's going to hate me for that. Kristin, we did it. We went through every struggle we had to, but we made this happen.
Yeah. I've been doing my StreamYard like twice a week too. I don't know what happened there.
I don't know. It was just this weirdo echo. So you use it already. You're see, everybody knows this thing all of a sudden. It was not there and then it was there.
Yeah.
But we want to talk a little bit about something different. We don't have lingerie. We're going to talk about farm to table type stuff and food and an incredible experience. Walk me through a little bit about what made you set this up the way you did and what's involved.
Well, I guess the story started, as you asked me last week, the story started with my son, who, when he was 4 years old, he was diagnosed with being allergic to the world, which was grass, dust, every animal, every type of pollen, bees. I had to follow him around with an EpiPen and an asthma inhaler. He would just he'd scream and cry all night that he couldn't breathe. Lots of emergency room visits, and it was just frightening. And doctors kept giving me different medications for him, and none of them were working, and he was only getting worse. So finally, I stopped giving him the medications when the side effects. He wasn't growing, he wasn't eating, and it was really scary as a mom, of course. So I started researching on the internet why kids had so many allergies these days and why he had such a depressed immune system. And I found out that kids that grow up on farms don't have as many allergies as kids that don't. And so this really intrigued me. And I also found out that unpasteurized milk could be a cure for allergies, and even grown-ups who had had allergies for years and years and years had cured themselves with when they started drinking unpasteurized milk. This terrified me when I first heard of it because at the time I sterilized everything. But the stories of healing were so compelling that I just started. I met some farmers, met their families, made sure that they weren't dead, met their customers, and started drinking raw milk, a lot of it, before I gave it to my kids. And as soon as I gave it to my kids, and as soon as it was the milk in our refrigerator, my son was completely cured, and he has no allergies to this day. So it wasn't just the raw milk. It was also, I guess we call it the ancestral diet. It was the Weston Price Foundation, which is a nutritional educational foundation that taught me about how our ancestors ate, which is obviously before the industrial food. When we ate meat, it was wild. It was, from the land. We hunted, or it was, there was no such thing as factory farming. We ate fish. It was fresh caught. When we ate vegetables, they were unsprayed. Our ancestors, when they ate grains, they were soaked. And when they had dairy, it was clean and raw. So, there's no such thing as pasteurization, which is very important if you're factory farming. But if you have clean, fresh, regulated, tested raw milk, then it can be very safe and healthy for us. So we started eating this way. And in order to get these foods, I belonged to 3 buying clubs: a meat buying club, a dairy buying club, and a vegetable buying club, where I bought directly from farmers. And eventually, after a few years of doing this, I found out that around the country, many of the buying clubs that, just like the ones that I was buying from, were getting shut down and raided under armed raids by the government. So this, I was very angry, and I wanted to expose this, make a show or make a podcast about it. And I was trying to get newscasters or documentary makers to make a documentary about it. And finally, one of the people that I've been speaking to from CNN said, "Hey, if you want to make this documentary, you just need to do it yourself." So I set up and traveled around the country and set up interviews of these people that had been raided, and made the movie Farmageddon, the unseen war on American family farms, which you can see on Amazon Prime, Hulu, Vudu, and iTunes still. But while I was traveling, and I was staying with chefs and farmers and food bloggers and other moms that ate this way, and I was staying in pockets of the United States where there was very strong connections with, like I said, chefs and farmers and food writers and moms, and they just had these very tight communities where they shared food and bought direct farm to table. So when I came back to my hometown of Concord, Massachusetts, and we have so many farms surrounding, I wanted to have the same exact thing that I had seen in other places in the country: a strong network of direct farmer interaction, direct farmer farm to consumer. And so that's how the restaurant was born. We at first, it was just going to be a food truck where I went around to area farms and made a few meals that you could order each week, and the idea snowballed and turned into a full
to the whole caboodle
restaurant. So,
and it's gone since. So there's so many things to pick into from all the various parts of the story. And I knew you from Farmageddon. I knew you from watching that, and I've been a sort of on and off passionate person about people that you also like the Saladins and all the people out there doing kind of neat things. And I want to ask you like 8,000 things, but let me just start here. I was thinking about the fact that, so here's how it works for me. I have no particular allergies, except maybe to my feline roommate in here right now. Beyond that, my mom, by the way, is allergic to about everything you can breathe. So I get that feeling. The experience with those Saladins and you and all these kinds of people is that like you go, oh, that would be so cool. And I live in a very small, I live up by Amesbury, Newburyport, that area. So that part of Massachusetts as well is like, there's a farm right down the street. There's 3 or 4 more where I could be in buy clubs. But you really have to choose to do that. Like you have to choose to go out of your way and kind of pick off these kinds of places where you can get this food. So I kind of go, yeah, and I do it for like, a week or so, and I don't have any particular allergies, then I'm done with it. It's not really in the chain, so to speak. But we just went through the apocalypse. And at the early part of the apocalypse, everything shut down. Everybody suddenly didn't have access, and distributed meat, for instance, just couldn't do what it needed to do to bring proteins and vegetables and everything to these areas. So that's a big, long setup to say, do you think people are going to think a little differently about this now that we went through this particular apocalypse? And now that it's through Farmageddon, through a lot of these other movies like this, we can see use cases for how to do this in very sustainable ways. Meaning, there's a lot of people saying, well, you can only get it through the factory system now because that's how it's set up, but that's not true. What do you think people are thinking now that the apocalypse is, in full fledged?
Yeah. Like I said, I hope people are thinking differently about food. That would be a great thing to come out of the apocalypse, as you say. I do know that during lockdown, a lot of the farmers around where I live in Massachusetts, they were doing great. A lot of people were calling, and they were running out of things. Even my farm, I failed to mention that I started a restaurant that was farm to table. We do support area farmers, but we didn't think that we'd have enough grass-fed meat. So we started our own farm also where we raise beef, pork, chicken, duck, eggs, and chicken for eggs, chicken for meat, and lamb at the farm for the restaurant. And then we also support other farmers because we have a lot of demand. But so during COVID, since my restaurant was shut down, and we had a backup of meat. Instead of when our animals were slaughtered, we usually put them in. We usually have them delivered in larger cuts, and chef butchers them into what he wants. And this time around, we turned it instead into little tiny retail packages for the individual consumers, because people were calling and looking to the farms for food, and so, because number one, they didn't want to go into crowded grocery stores. 2, there was a little bit of a shortage, and 3, people were really thinking about where they wanted to get their food from.
Our friend Kate had a comment. She said, do you mentor anyone? And that's what I thought when I saw all the people walking around on the farm. Do you do those kind of tours and that sort of thing? Is it a learning farm experience and all that sort of deal?
Yeah, we have that. You can come up to the farm and stay and do like a farm stay where you get a tour and you get to participate in chores. Or you can just stay there as an Airbnb and vacation. It's in the White Mountains, so people do use it for skiing or hiking, or we have lots of trails on the farm. But many people go up and want to have the whole farm experience, and so that's great. And we also, as far as mentoring, my staff, I have 3 restaurants now, and my staff, they love to come up to the farm. And we haven't been able to do it this year, unfortunately, but every other year I've shut down the restaurant for a few days, and everybody comes up to the farm and meets the farmers, and works with the animals. And we just like Joel Salatin, of course, we pasture raise the animals. We move them
right
2 or 3 times a day to keep their diapers clean, as he says. And, so my staff gets to participate in that, or anybody that stays at the farm gets to participate in that.
Yeah, when you said whole farm experience, I sort of thought of like City Slickers with Billy Crystal, because I was thinking about the whole farm experience is like, getting up at 4 and, breech births and all these things that no one wants to do. But yeah, it's exciting that they can have that touch. I have a question, and it sort of relates almost to, I love when things we love alchemy on the Backpack Show. We love when we don't plan something and it actually connects anyway. And that's, Maïna was talking about the fact that her experience is a little more expensive. It's out of the price range of some people, but you have to price it that way to sustain it, to get that experience just the way she wants it. The kind of food that you sell and the kind of quality of it and all that, I would presume it's a different price range. People who are, maybe budget conscious because of what's happened in the last handful of months, maybe they have a challenge. I'm curious to know what you say when you talk about that, like sort of the affordability of eating ancestrally the way you're working on.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have to admit, and I can go on and on about this. First of all, we all have to think about what we're putting into our mouths and what we're supporting with our money. There's no such thing as a cheap food system. Something's always being hurt, and there's a cost to, yes, factory farmed meat is cheaper, but you have to think about where your money's going, and there's a cost to that. There's a cost to the environment, and there's a cost to your body, and so it is much more expensive. And also the factory farmed system is subsidized by the government.
Right.
And so it's much more expensive. However, our cows graze on land, and, just like Joel Salatin will tell you, our farm is green during drought. We just had a horrible drought in New Hampshire, and our farm stayed green the whole time without irrigation, which is amazing. And, when we pasture raise our animals, we sequester carbon in the soil. We're able to retain more water. And, you know, I'm a big fan also. You mentioned Joel. Joel's a student of Alan Savory, the Savory Institute, Alan Savory, and that's what we follow too, his pasture recommendations for animals, which is like 1 cow per acre.
It's 1 per acre.
Yeah, so Alan travels the world telling people how we can really help climate change and really help the environment by pasturing our animals. So, and also, you know, you don't have to buy grass-fed filet mignon. You know, you can there's cheaper cuts of meat. There's, you know, grass-fed chicken thighs are going to be cheaper than chicken breasts, or have the whole chicken and then use it for soup. And you know, so, you know, there are things that you can do when you're on a budget and still support the environment, still support small farmers, still eat grass-fed meat.
Absolutely. I was thinking about this, and Sarah has a question too. I was thinking about the fact that, you know, had your kid been quote unquote just fine and like could have totally eaten a double quarter pounder with cheese or whatever, you'd have had a different life. What would that life have maybe been if you didn't like put your everything into this everything? I mean, and you do this 360, like this, like all of the ways that you could look at this, all the perspectives, you make films about it, you live it. You've got a couple of 3 restaurants going right now. It's a busy world. What would Kristin have been if you know, the kid was fine?
I'm a speech pathologist.
Huh.
So when I learned about, I worked up until my 3rd child was born in speech pathology in hospitals and schools, a children's hospital, and so I wanted to go back and do a combination of nutrition and speech therapy. Of course, this had already, you know, I'd already cured my son, and I was going back to speech pathology. I loved it, but I thought nutrition and therapy at the same time could really help kids. But that's when right when I was about to go back and I was applying for jobs again, I found out about the raids, and so I never went back to speech pathology, and this is my life.
Wow. Way to pivot, says Sarah. Birthday girl, Sarah, by the way. She asked, how's your son doing now? Does he know that this wonderful project was birthed out of care and love for him?
He knows. He works for me in the restaurant. He's a bartender now. So that was a long time ago. He's 20.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I just had that. I've only known you personally now for like 20 minutes. I just had that experience that you have when you see the picture of the kid and you've only ever thought of him as like the 8-year-old, you know, Cub Scout or something. And you go, he's a bartender. That's not even legal. So yeah. My mom was accused of this a lot at the phone company. She'd have pictures of me like age 13 and I walked in the door age 19 or whatever. So
yeah.
Linda LOPEKE knows your work. Farmageddon's a great title for Kristin's documentary. She's going to dig into that. So there's a genre of that. It's really weird when you think about that, but there's a genre of, like, we both keep mentioning Joel Salatin, Michael Pollan shows up in a few. There's all these, there's also, of course, just the plant-based people as well, which I'm sure, you know, that's another whole fight for another whole group of people. But this kind of stuff, Rob Wolf, for instance, talks very positively about what your methods are and how you're doing what you do. It's interesting that there's kind of a religion and a war about even how you're doing this very great sustainable stuff. Someone still comes around and barks at you about something, I'm sure.
Well, quite honestly, I haven't had that much an experience with that too much. I have taken a lot of vegans and vegetarians up to my farm, and because I've had yoga retreats there, so people have come up for other reasons. And instead of flack, I've received more of, hey, if I was going to eat animals, this is the way that I would want to do it. So
what more do you want?
On the receiving end of that. We do have vegan and vegetarian options in my restaurant and in my restaurants, and they are, you know, they're organic. And so that's also the way that they like to eat. So it's something for everyone, but and you have Sacred Cow Up. That's my good friend, Diana Rogers, who just wrote that book with Rob Wolf. And, you know, I just interviewed her last week for my podcast.
That's great.
And she, you know, she reminded me to say that there's no such thing as a no-kill system. You know,
right.
We talk about that, you know, even when you're, you know, she talked about when you're plowing for vegetables, you know, you're killing you're killing the rodents and the bunnies. And, you know, she talked about that there's no such thing as a no-kill system. And once you accept that, then maybe you can turn the corner to accepting that, you know, our animals are living a happy life. We do our best to have no stress in their bodies. They kind of, they're transported humanely and safely and killed as humanely as possible in a certified organic slaughterhouse. And so, you know, we do our best to make sure that they live very happy lives. And, you know, when people see that, they do feel better about it.
So while we're talking, typing my face off trying to find your podcast, but I did not succeed.
I haven't released it yet. Sorry.
Oh, you son of a!
I have about 10
idea.
episodes, and I've just been working on it.
Got it.
It's for the next few weeks. Sorry.
All right. Cate Colgan asks a kind of 140 characters question. Do you cook for yourself still? You know, being that you've done all this restauranting, do you just like make hot dogs, or like what do you do at home?
I live right above my restaurant right now. And so I have not cooked in like where I live. I have not cooked for a while because I just go right downstairs to the restaurant and all my meat is there. And I have chefs that can make me food, which is great. However, I go up to the farm once a week and I'm always entertaining there and I cook up there. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I cook for myself and the rest of the week I pretty much eat at the restaurant.
What's that? I'm blanking on what they call it. A lot of restaurants have just a meal that the cooks and the servers and everybody eats together. Is that called family meal? What's that called?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have family meal at your restaurant?
Every day.
Oh my golly. So you get to eat that quality of food for that. All right. I'm going to bring Maïna in and we're going to do a little quick panel and then we're going to get the heck out of here. But let me just hit a button. Boop. There we go. Everybody's here. Magic, even without Carrie. Carrie's doing so much other work elsewhere, and she is so sad she couldn't be here. She booked you both because she just couldn't wait to talk to you. And then she's running a really large conference with thousands of people today online. So it's left to just idiot me. One question that had come in, or one comment, I think it might have even just been a comment that came in for you, Maïna, after you'd gone back. Oh, yeah. Great to hear your story and perspective. Such valid points about authenticity and avoiding getting caught up as being seen as a trend, which that kind of lit my back mind as well. You both picked your own paths. Kristin with a slight, kind of had to do it, but you really kind of own it. There's something better than that sort of goofy cliche adage of, if you can dream it, you can be it, but you're doing it and you're picking choices that are harder than what's the easier choice or the more obvious choice all the time. I'll start with Maïna. How do you do that? How do you maintain that mindset when it's so much easier to surrender and do the other stuff?
I think it's about, I think it helps doing this in our era versus the past because we've got access to more mediums to promote ourselves, and you can sort of find your tribe, and it's having a goal that's more set about what kind of lifestyle you want for yourself, what kind of legacy you want, what's your purpose and what do you want to leave behind, and how you want to be seen and how you want to interact with other people's lives. I think for me, that's what I always keep in mind is basically, I always say be human, and that encompasses authenticity and all these things. And I think it's harder to do that for me, my company doesn't have to sell millions and millions a year to make me happy. This is not my goal. My goal was to create a company that sustains itself and sustains me and adds value to other people's life. So I think with that in mind, it's a little bit easier to continue to stick to what I feel is right, rather than, hop onto every single trend and lose myself and lose the spirit of my brand. So I think there's something with potentially managing growth and managing volume that helps me stick to the spirit of the brand and what I've been trying to achieve.
And why ancestral foods, Kristin? Was it just based out of the allergy type stuff, or what made you not decide to go, as close as you can to the normal?
Well, once I learned about it, once I realized that, I'd been putting so much processed food into my body and to my children's bodies, I didn't have a choice. And then, like you said, it's so hard. for people, so I'm preaching it, and it's so hard for people to do, especially when they have families, especially when they're working and then have kids and activities and driving around to eat healthy. I wanted to make it easier for people by having a restaurant and then come eat at. So.
All right. So we are near the end of the show. There's 2 more things that we have to do. One of them is my job and the other is your job. So I'm going to do it in reverse order and just kind of show you what you have to think about. There's one question we ask every guest, which is what goes in your backpack? And the idea is basically that over the next 5 years, everything's still, we're kind of building on shifting sands here. We don't know what's going to happen. We can only put a small amount of things into the backpack. So people have put metaphorical things in there like hope or stick-to-itiveness or, self-determination. Other people have put really personal things in there, physical things in there, like an avocado. So whatever you want, you can think about that while I get to person of the day. Person of the day is sponsored by PubSite, pub-site.com, sponsors person of the day. You, Annette Mason, are person of the day. Annette, this entitles you to an apple, just like that one. You could just go to any store you want or any orchard or any farm and buy an apple just like that, and it's yours. You're the person of the day. You could pick the one you want. Congratulations. I can't remember if I'd made you person of the day recently or not, but I don't care. I get to pick. There's not a democracy, which we're learning in America. So let's talk about the backpack question. The question is, what goes in your backpack? I'm going to start with you, Maïna.
I actually think it's what I said before, is to continue being human in everything that I do. This brand, what I'm doing through the brand would exist through another mean if it wasn't the brand. And that's what I keep in my backpack. It's that.
I love it. Kristin Canty, tell me a little bit about what goes in your backpack.
Well, physically, I guess it would be grass-fed beef jerky because it would last for a while.
Nice.
And resiliency and being able to, change quickly. We've had to go on a different course over and over and over again and reinvent ourselves constantly during COVID and just being able to change and roll with the punches has been a big deal.
I can't even begin to imagine it for the fact of, the supply chain of what you do, the restaurant side of things, the farm and all that. I mean, just the rolling hills and I'm sure it hasn't exactly been roses for you, Maïna. So it's a crazy time indeed. I like both answers. One of the things I wanted to say is that my first farm experience that I remember is on my mom's side of the family because my grandfather ran a really smallish farm. But my favorite farm experiences came from hanging out with my grandmother because she had a kind of magic trick that would happen. My grandmother liked to point a lot. And I don't know why, but almost every picture you see of her finger was out. And one thing you should know about her pointing is that just when that happens,